Hello and welcome to the Gradcracker webinar with CERN, our first webinar of 2025 and always a highlight in our webinar calendar. My name is Sophie, I'm a director at Gradcracker and have been with the business for the last 12 years. I've been working with CERN for the last 7 years and I'm really excited for you all to find out more about the amazing opportunities they offer to STEM students and graduates. I'm also joined by my co-director Jessica, who I'm sure many of you will recognise from previous webinars and the many university presentations she delivers. Jess?
Thank you, Soph. Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Jess, and I am also a fellow director here at Gradcracker. And my role is to really just make sure that all the students that are interested in the world of STEM are aware of Gradcracker and the fantastic opportunities our employer have.
Amazing, thanks, Jess. So during today's webinar, our aim is to find out more about CERN, their opportunities, and what life is like working there. Starting with our contact, Barbara from the talent acquisition team, we'll have an introduction to CERN as an organisation and their opportunities. The rest of the panel from CERN will then talk to you about their educational background, their day-to-day roles, and what life is like working at one of the world's largest and most respected centres for scientific research. Towards the end of the webinar, we'll discuss the recruitment process and give you some hints and tips on how to be successful in securing a role with CERN, including some of the individual experiences of the students and graduates on the panel. There will also be a few questions from you, our students, dotted throughout the webinar that you've kindly submitted in advance of today. Okay, so let's get started. Barbara, can you tell us all about CERN, please?
Yeah, with pleasure. So CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, is basically what we call the world's biggest playground for physicists and engineers who are trying to figure out how the universe works. And CERN was founded 70 years ago. So last year we celebrated our 70th birthday, founded in 1954. And we're located on the Franco-Swiss border. And we're home to the Large Hadron Collider, the LHC, the thing that most people know when we talk about CERN. And it's the largest and most powerful particle accelerator. So if I put it in really simple words, what we're trying to do here at CERN is scientists smash tiny particles together at almost the speed of light to see what they're made of and uncover the secrets of the universe. So quite a big goal for us to achieve. And you might remember, I don't know, when the Higgs boson was discovered,
Yes.
aka the God particle, and that was a huge win for CERN. We still talk about it quite a lot. But looking ahead, CERN's planning even bigger and better projects, like upgrading the LHC to produce even more powerful collisions. And then we're also exploring building a new collider that's even larger, called the Future Circular Collider. And yeah, as I said, our ultimate goal is basically to unravel more cosmic mysteries like dark matter and the origins of the universe. For me, it's really like a real life science fiction adventure working here.
Amazing. That's a great way to sell it. No, that's brilliant. Thank you for that introduction, Barbara. I mean, I know a lot of our audience will know of CERN and the incredible things that you've already discovered. And there's so much information on the Gradcracker Company Hub about CERN's future plans, their vision. So there's so much more information that you can find out as well. But obviously, you have lots and lots of opportunities for students and graduates every year, Barbara. So can you give us an overview of the roles that you recruit each year and that are currently advertised on the Gradcracker Company Hub?
Definitely. I'll try to group them a little bit because I think throughout the year we offer about 1,000 positions. So we have many, many opportunities. But basically, in terms of student programs, to start with, we have the summer student program, the technical student program, the administrative student program, and the doctoral student program, and the short-term internship. So I'll try to go through them and quickly explain. But our biggest program is the technical student program. So that's basically an internship or placement program from 4 to 14 months. Usually, the longer you stay, the better the chances, because of course our supervisors are looking to train someone for a year instead of just 4 months. But everything's possible. And the program is open to all nationals of our member and associate member states. We currently have 34 member and associate member states, so there is a wide range there as well. And all you need to have basically to be eligible is have completed 3 semesters of undergraduate studies by the time you're selected. And as you said, Sophie, all our relevant student and graduate opportunities can be found on Gradcracker. You can read through all the details over there as well. But the technical studentship is basically open in 6 domains. And if you want to apply to multiple of them at the same time, that's totally fine for us. And we're looking forward to seeing your application there. The deadline is the 3rd of March for this round. So that's an important thing to note.
Yeah.
And in parallel, we also have the administrative student program open. So if you have any neighbors, colleagues, friends who are interested in more of an administrative domain, we also offer that. Then the third program within that group is a doctoral student program. So anyone thinking about starting their PhD soon or anyone who has recently started, just head over to the Gradcracker Hub and apply. And you can write your thesis with your university, but kind of researching at CERN and having a CERN
Amazing.
supervisor as well. And in total, the doctoral student program is 12 to 36 months, so it can be up to 3 years. Again, same deadline, 3rd of March. The summer student program closes on the 26th of January, and it's really, really cool program. You can join CERN for 2 to 3 months. You won't only work on a project, but you'll also go to lectures, workshops, visits. There's special summer student parties that are being organized as well. So that's a really, really cool program, and it's open to all nationalities as well.
Wonderful.
The short-term internship, the last student program, is open to all students as well, and you can join CERN for 1 to 6 months. So even if you just have 4 weeks, join us, apply. It's open all year around. It works like a spontaneous application. And then for the graduate program, the most relevant here is the Origin program, which is for early career professionals. So if you have graduated with a bachelor's or a master's degree and have less than 2 years of work experience after your most recent graduation, you can apply to this one. And contracts are usually 1 to 2 years long, extendable up to 3. And we publish positions almost every day. So keep checking the hub, and I'm sure there will be something in there for you.
And can I just get out there? And I want to say well done to Sophie and Barbara, because the company hub that you guys have on Gradcracker is brilliant. I do all my research on there before these webinars, but I must say, as a student, you really do need to go and look at every single page that is on there, because Sophie and Barbara have worked so hard to get all that content on there, and it is fantastic. So well done to both of you.
No, it is brilliant.
It really is good.
There's so much information that you can find out on there. And we've got a real overview about all the different programs that Barbara's just run through for you. And like Barbara said, there are roles added literally every day to the CERN Company Hub. We've got 30 live graduate roles at the moment. There's the 10 internships that she's mentioned. So lots and lots of opportunities all year round. So kind of leads me on to the next question, which is about who you recruit, because one of the things that I know that we've discussed over the years is that people have had the preconception that CERN only hires physicists, but that is totally not true. So can you give us an overview of the types of disciplines that you might recruit?
Honestly, I'll try, but CERN recruits in so many disciplines, so it's really hard. It's a very wide range. It's not all about physicists, not at all. We've got lots of roles for engineers, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, civil, you name it, but also software developers, data scientists, and IT specialists, which are crucial to keep the whole place running. And it doesn't stop there. We need technicians to do all the maintenance work, but also vacuum experts, radio protection pros. We even have unique roles like cryogenics specialists who keep the LHC at a temperature of almost absolute zero, so minus 271 degrees. And then also beam physicists who manage the tiny particle beams that it's all about. And it's not just technical roles here either. We hire firefighters on site for safety. We have legal professionals, communication, social media experts, international professionals, and obviously HR, the department I work in. So it's really a mix of talents here.
Yeah, amazing. And I think that's really key to get across, that there is literally something for everybody at CERN. There is a role to suit any background, any discipline. So don't just think it's just physicists, because it's not. And our panel today proves that. And when we come on to meet everybody in a few moments, you'll see the different backgrounds that we just got represented today. So thank you so much, Barbara. We'll be coming back to you towards the end of the webinar to run through the recruitment process to find out a little bit more about how people can secure that role. But now we're going to meet the rest of the panel from CERN. So we're joined by James, Dan and Zoe, all of whom found their roles at CERN and applied by using Gradcracker. So over to you, Jess.
Perfect. Thank you, Sophie, and thank you, Barbara, for that amazing introduction. So, James, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay. Where did you go to university and what did you study?
So I went to the University of Nottingham and I studied electrical and electronic engineering with a placement year as well. And that was the MEng course. So it's 5 years in total.
Fantastic. And can you tell us a bit about your current role and when did you join CERN and the kind of process so far?
Yeah, so I joined CERN in July, which was just after I graduated, which was a bit of a rushed experience for me, but I think it was worth it.
Yeah.
And currently, so the team I work in is called Beam Transfer Electronics, and we work within a larger department, which is called Accelerator Systems. So everything to do with the actual accelerators themselves. So that's LHC, obviously the main one, and then all the rest as well. So as part of that, the kind of stuff that I'm looking into and doing is we kind of look at monitoring conditions within the beam, checking if everything's safe, everything's how it should be, and then performing things like extraction operations and performing all the sorts of control and electronics around that we need to do to keep everything running smoothly and safely.
Perfect. And that sounds so interesting. I can't wait to hear more about your role and what you've been up to, James. So thank you so much for the introduction. Dan, I'm going to come to you next. Similar kind of questions. Where did you go to university and what did you study? Because you're on the placement program, aren't you?
Yes, that's correct. So I'm a technical student, as Barbara, one of the things that she mentioned. So I'm still at university. I'm at the University of Bath, and I'm studying computer science and artificial intelligence. So
fantastic.
That's
very
very
exciting.
wide. It's nothing to do with physics at all.
No, exactly. A great example
Yeah.
that as Barbara mentioned, do not just recruit physicists. So yeah, Dan, tell us a bit about your current role then, the technical studentship, and when you joined, and again, similar question, how the process has been so far.
Yep. So I joined in July, same as James. And my main sort of project that I'm working on at the moment is a big data migration effort that we're putting in. CERN has a large infrastructure for the web, thousands and thousands of sites, and essentially they're all using different technologies to be stored. And there's a big effort to sort of standardize and push forward a new standard to manage these. And so a large part of what I'm working on is essentially building a new toolkit to create and establish these sites or any kind of content on the web, and then working on some processes where we can then sort of map all of these different bits of data that we've got to one central standardized system. So that's sort of the main overview with every now and again, there'll be some little thing that there's to do, but that's sort of the main project that we're working on.
Fantastic. It sounds like a lot of responsibility already, Dan. Yeah. How have you found that? Still being a student at university, not at kind of the graduation stage just yet, but how have you found that transition?
It's been, I'm very lucky, I'd say, and I think it's common pattern from speaking to a lot of my friends at CERN, where the supervisor that I have is very good at his job. He sort of balances very well. He gives me a lot of control and a lot of ability to make decisions, and sort of give me freedom to do what I think is right. But then also I have a team that's there, and we all bounce ideas off each other. It's very collaborative. We're able to there's no one person responsible for anything, so that we each sort of have our ability to share our opinion and to implement our own things and sort of take credit for that, but also we're also there to help each other and sort of pick up the pieces if things do go wrong, which is
Yeah.
so I think that's the main thing. It's very, very collaborative, very open, which means that it's not too stressful, but you still get that sense of pride that you're able to actually contribute something, and you're not just making the coffee for the supervisor.
Exactly, yeah. And you know what? I think that word the collaborative is going to be used quite a lot throughout this webinar, isn't it? I think that is
I think so.
yeah,
Yes.
you're all pulling in the same direction, you know, to figure those questions out. So yeah, I think that's a great word, and I think we'll definitely be using that in our overview, won't we, Soph?
I would imagine so.
So thank you so much, Dan, for that. Again, we're going to come back in a little bit more detail to find out a bit more what we've been up to. But Zoe, I want to come to you last but not least. Again, similar kind of questions. Could you tell us a bit about where you went to university and what you studied and your current role at CERN?
Of course, yes. So I just graduated from the University of Manchester, and I have my MEng in chemical engineering, and I started at CERN on September 2nd in the Origin graduate program. And I work in the HSE, so Health, Safety and Environment Department as a junior health and safety engineer. I work in the process engineering section of that department, which is a very, very broad
Yeah.
thing to work in. Basically, CERN is full of all kinds of diverse equipment and installations. Some of it is, you know, nowhere else in the world. Some of it is quite standard, but my job is mainly to make sure that all of it is safe, operational, mainly in the people side of things. So making sure no one's getting injured or hurt. But yeah, all sorts of different tasks in that respect. And some of it also involves even looking at the legal frameworks behind some of that, given that CERN is partly in France and partly in Switzerland. There's different regulations and standards for all of the equipment that we have. So I'm out there tutting up people, making sure that everything is in good functioning order. Very collaborative, and I get to be out on the field a lot, which is something that I really value because CERN is full of fascinating installations, and being able to be a part of all of it is really quite a privilege.
Oh, I can imagine. And Zoe, I can't wait to hear more about your role because I have thought about you quite a bit since our prep sessions. I'm thinking, how do you do your job? You've got so many factors to play with, you know, experiment on things that, you know, aren't being experimented anywhere else in the world. How do you write, you know, certain policies and put a safe environment together? And when, like I say, you've got nothing really to bounce off when it's the only place in the world that you're doing it. So yeah, can't wait to hear more about your role and what you've been up to. So James, I'm going to come back to you. So I wonder a bit of a kind of a deep dive, if we can, into the projects that you've been involved in so far, and yeah, what's the kind of process looking like in terms of from now on in with your relationship with CERN and what the next you know few months is going to look like. So yeah, I'll hand it over to you. Give us an insight.
Yeah, so I think one of the quite a nice thing about the graduate programs, I can speak, not necessarily for all, but for a lot of graduates, is that you get assigned kind of one big project to work on, as opposed to sort of being spread across multiple different projects, where you're potentially having to juggle lots of things at once and not being able to fully focus on one thing. So me personally, I've been put on a project relating to a system called the beam energy tracking system. So what that's kind of doing is we monitor the energy in the accelerator at different points around it, performing a bunch of computations and measurements on it, checking is everything okay, do we think this is safe, and do we think it's operating how we expect it to? And then based on those kind of measurements we can make decisions about what to do with the beam, if we need to extract some energy out of it, inject more energy into it, for example. And yeah, it's a really interesting project, and obviously you don't find something like this anywhere else to work on.
Yeah.
I remember when I arrived, there was a lot of reading up on papers, figuring out how things work, because it's just, you know, often you're applying similar engineering techniques that you would in other companies, but the end application is just so different, which I really like. And yeah, day to day, I'd say what I'm doing is exactly what it said on the job description, which I'm really happy about.
Good, yeah.
So day to day, kind of doing hardware design work, software design, you know, at different stages of the project. So I've just finished a big design stage, and then that will get sent off for manufacturing. And then in the next few months, when those sort of things come back, you become more into sort of a testing phase. So it really is, it's really nice that you have this project. It's kind of like your baby that you're just working on. And you know, you have a lot of time to work on it, and there's not like as such severe deadlines of, you know, this needs to be done this week, that next week. It's kind of a more long-term project, which is quite nice.
That's quite good.
And yeah, obviously, as Dan mentioned, a lot about collaboration. It's a lot of working with other people in your team, other people in different teams. And obviously, there's some people that have been working here for 20 plus years that just know so much. So it's great to go to them for help and get lots of information about how things work.
Yeah, I was going to ask about your team, James, and how do you find that? Are you with other graduates within your team, or do you find that it's a real mix across different teams? Are you working with people, you know, again, that maybe been there for years? How does that look like? And you know, what's kind of your, because just before you put your background on, we could see that you were in an office. You know, what does that look like for you on a day to day, and what's a typical day look like if you can put it in a typical
So I
day?
think it really depends on what team you're a part of,
Okay.
or sections as we call them, because they vary greatly in size. So my section, for example, there's 9 of us, which is relatively small. But then I have friends that work in sections with 40-ish people. It really depends. So for us, there's me and one other graduate, and the rest are staff here. So yeah, you generally have a mix of permanent staff that have been here for a long time. They're really experts in the field, and then you'll have long duration staff which have been here anywhere between 0 and 5 years, and then some graduates as well. So it's a really diverse mix of people as well. You know, everyone from different countries pretty much.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's nice because you know, you're all on the same corridor, you're all close to each other. If you need to go ask someone for help, you just pop into their office and ask them a question. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's again what makes working at CERN another unique experience, because you mix with these people that, like you say, from so many different backgrounds. I've got so many different experiences, and yeah, I think it must be quite a magical place to work. In terms of kind of the day to day, then James, you know, just for our audience, then, and kind of maybe those technical questions that maybe they have burning in their brains listening to you. How often do you run the LHC, and how often have you really kind of got your hands in on the experience?
Well, so the LHC, I mean, it's switched off at the moment, but the LHC is apart from the end of year stop, it's running constantly. Me personally, I you know, my design is to integrate into the next long shutdown. So my work is not directly impacting what's happening in the LHC today, as it were, but it's kind of laying the groundworks for future upgrades to the project. But yeah, day to day, it's great. It's lots of design work, which I really like, lots of testing, and yeah, you'll have meetings as you will with any company or organization you work for. But yeah, it's just a really nice atmosphere and really nice place to work.
Brilliant. Thanks, James. And is there anything that you've maybe experienced so far? You think, wow, I didn't realize that I was going to get involved in this. Is there anything a bit unique that's happened to you so far?
I think a lot of the uniqueness is just because of the application. So even having to do things like radiation safety training, or all those kind of trainings where you get to learn about all of these, it's quite nice because whilst on a day-to-day basis I'm not exposed to radiation, by doing a training you get to learn a bit more about it and where it applies at CERN and all those kind of things. And also there's lots of meetings and stuff where it's kind of focused on like knowledge transfer, so potentially between departments or groups. So for example, in my group, we have a meeting every week where someone can give a presentation about what they've been working on. And that's quite nice to kind of, get a bit more exposure to what's going on here, because it's such a big organization. There's so many different things that it's impossible to kind of know everything that's going on here. So it's quite nice to get a bit of exposure to other things.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good. Perfect. Thank you so much, James. Super interesting. I could just talk to you yourself for the rest of the webinar, but we do need to pass it round. But thank you so much for that. Dan, I'm going to come to you next. Again, similar kind of questions. What has the role looked like for you so far? And tell us a bit more about the projects that you've been involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first joined back in July, I think, and it's kind of a similar theme for a lot of people on the tech path, internship path, where you spend the first week or two sort of getting to know people and the team, but also getting to know exactly the kind of how everything works. So in my case, how all the infrastructure works, how sort of all the tech that we have running, how that's all deployed, how we sort of work as a team, how you kind of collaborate on the changes and on everything that you're to push into these production machines. And then from there, once you sort of kind of have a rough idea, I sort of then just dove straight into the project. And I was also very lucky because I joined right at the beginning of when this big data migration was starting, which is partly just coincidence, but also supervisors kind of designed it so that because there's me and one other person that joined my team as well. We're both at the same level in terms of done the same number of years at uni, and we're still undergrads. So we both sort of got to start right at the beginning of this big project, and we sort of each picked our areas to work on. So in my case, it was designing the underlying way that new web content, so websites and anything hosted on web infrastructure, how that's going to be stored, and then that then impacts how users across CERN then create content or create. The very interesting thing about CERN is because obviously it was the sort of the birthplace of the web. We have decades of websites that still exist, even if they haven't been accessed for a long time. So there's I think there's over 9,000 individual websites, and the sort of the use case for them can vary dramatically. It's not sort of your normal website. People like experiments or scientists will run operations through some websites, and some will just be serving content. So you have a very wide sort of use case of what the web infrastructure sort of needs to be used for. And so joining at the start of this project where we can now design the underlying structure, how we're storing them, and then that impacts this big task that we'll have sort of after this initial stage, where we then need to take all of these thousands of websites that are doing various different things and then map them now to this new underlying sort of technology that we've put together. And that's sort of been the real the challenge, but it's been really fun to be able to work with the team to solve these challenges and to sort of constantly be iterating on that. It's been
you've kind of, like you say, you've joined at a perfect time, haven't you?
Yes,
taking on
exactly.
as a team, you're all taking on this challenge as well.
Absolutely.
And will you be working on this project till the end of your internship as well?
Yes, so I will be sort of hopefully seeing most of it through. But I think one very interesting thing about CERN, one of the many very interesting things about CERN, is the fact that it is very much like a university in the sense, well, it kind of is in the sense, obviously, there's a lot of research being done and there's lectures going on and you can go and learn things. And a consequence of that is I've reached out to various different people, and so I'm sort of taking part in other projects alongside my actual job, just because I have sort of interest in them. And my degree is obviously computer science and machine learning, basically. So I'm sort of getting involved with one of the big experiments on the LHC ring, and getting involved in doing some machine learning mainly just learning more than anything about sort of the applications that they're using, the models that they're deploying, how they're training them specifically for sort of high energy physics. So I think whilst yes, I will have this sort of main project as my day to day, everybody I have found is very friendly and very sort of accommodating. If you want to go and speak to someone and say, "What on earth do you do? Can I learn?"
What are you doing?
You can, which is amazing.
That's super true, because even if you go to a restaurant, a cafeteria for lunch, like you could have lunch with a Nobel Prize winner and they'd be absolutely happy to just let you sit with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That's amazing.
It is, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I was going to say that you could be having lunch with a Nobel Prize winner. I was actually going to say that exact thing, Barbara. It's amazing that you've got that, and I think it's what you've said, Dan, there about this is my day-to-day job, and the project you're working on sounds incredible. But you're like, no, I'm just going to go and see if I can get involved in the LHC over here, and you've just been able to start on working on a different project, and nowhere else in the world would you be able to get that experience. So I think that's a really good example to other students looking to apply for future roles that, take that, if you do get the opportunity to start at CERN, take that opportunity with both hands and do as much as you possibly can whilst you're there. So I think that's a great example.
Yeah, perfect.
Absolutely.
And thank you, Dan, for that. And Zoe, I'm going to come to you next. So again, it's conscious of time. Can you believe it's half an hour?
I know.
Can we just book this in till 5, please?
Yeah, just stay here all day.
So Zoe, yes, I want to find out more about your role as well, please. And so could you just give us an insight into what you've been up to since you joined CERN and about the projects you've been working on?
Of course. So actually, from the beginning, my job description was very, very open. And so I've had quite a contrasting experience because I haven't had one main project that I've been involved in the whole time I've been here. Rather, I've been dotting around doing all sorts of different things, which has been really interesting. I think especially within the safety department, there's so many different specialists in different fields. So similarly, again, that collaborative spirit of being able to talk to all sorts of people about their fields of specialty. And then in relation to what I do, so most recently, one of the big projects I've been involved in is I've completed writing a guideline for oxygen deficiency hazards at CERN. There is a huge amount of cryogenic equipment at CERN, most of it used to subcool the magnets. And in the event of a release of a big release of a cryogen, it's possible that people might asphyxiate on it, which is obviously not what we want. So I came up with a calculation basis to define the limits at which it's no longer safe. And I've written that up into a document that hopefully will be published soon. And so it feels really good and really empowering to be able to contribute to, I guess, the CERN culture of safety, which is something that people can sometimes take for granted. But with an installation as big, as international, and as prominent as ours, it's really important that people are aware that, on top of the very exciting research and physics that goes on, it is in fact somewhere that people can be safe. And, we're not creating black holes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything is above board. So yeah, that's something I've recently been involved in, but a lot of different incident analyses I've also been involved in. And again, given how broad the safety department is, a lot of people are always willing to take me along on their inspections and their site visits. So I've gotten to see all sorts of fascinating installations. And in all different domains. But yeah, it's almost too hard to summarize.
I feel like I've had a million questions that have just zoomed through my mind. Again, I want to ask you. So just going back to that paper that will be published, which is absolutely fantastic. But again, I don't know if I don't want to be negative, but that responsibility is massive. That's like a really huge achievement. And again, CERN giving you that responsibility to run and do that. What was the support like? How did you find doing it? And yeah.
Similarly to what's been said before, there's it's a huge amount of trust that's placed in you. And I think that that feels good. It's this feeling of, you've been selected, and there's a sensation that, they pick you, and therefore they know that what you're capable of. But at the same time, it's very open. So any questions that I've had at any point have been welcomed, and there's always room for discussion with different people about it as well. So that's been very helpful. And also, yeah, the freedom to just, go at it, see what you come up with, and have a very sort of welcoming, open space for feedback. That's been huge. And yeah.
And Zoe, what does kind of the remainder of your kind of period at CERN look like? So, what's the kind of the next steps? What's the next projects? Do you know what's coming through? Or is it kind of as and when you needed to kind of move on to the next project? What does that look like?
Both. I think one thing that I'm particularly keen on getting into is the environmental side of health, safety, and environment. So a big part of my degree was actually the sort of waste management side of things. And at CERN, as with many big organizations, we do have a very vast and large, a diverse type of waste. So there's a lot of radiological waste. We use a lot of different specialty chemicals and that kind of thing. And this is something that is really important to me. So I would love to be able to get involved and see also, I guess, from the regulatory side, how best to deal with these things and make sure that, CERN is respectful of the environment and then its immediate surroundings. I'm also going to be involved in a lot of the risk assessment frameworks that are being developed for CERN, some of which is very probabilistic. And so, again, using that more sort of technical side of my degree to be able to make sure that CERN is operating as safely as possible and in a harmonized manner, despite the fact that it is such a huge site, and again, in 2 different countries. Lots of research in that field as well, but I'm really looking forward to it. I think, lots to be excited about.
Lots to be excited about, lots to learn. And like I say, it's such a unique place to learn all this, isn't it? And this is for you personally, Zoe, whether you carry on your career at CERN or, wherever you end up in, 10, 20 years time in your career, it's such a fantastic way to get such unique experience, isn't it? Being at CERN and what that provides for you personally. So insightful. So next I want to talk a bit about the practicalities of relocating to CERN and how that actually works, because we've had quite a lot of students kind of submit questions before the webinar to say, what would that look like and how can CERN help you to do that? So James, I'm going to come back to you on how did you find the relocation? You did mention quite in your introduction that from kind of graduating to starting CERN, it all happened quite quickly. But how did that kind of happen for you? It might not be a typical journey for everyone, but give us a bit of an insight there, if that's okay.
Yeah, so for me, obviously, I had a bit of a rushed experience moving, but that was completely fine. The process starts from much earlier, so you'll get offered your job, and then once you've got your contract signed and everything, they'll start approaching you about where you want to live. So they offer you lots of guidance as well. So obviously, being right on the border of France and Switzerland, you have the option to live in France or Switzerland, of which if you're a UK citizen, if you're living in France, you'll need a visa as it's the EU, of which again, CERN give you most of the help for that. And then, so me personally, I chose to live in France, in a town called Saint-Genis, which is essentially, it's a CERN town, basically. If you go there, it seems like everyone there works at CERN, which is quite nice. It's its own kind of little community. But yeah, so I think CERN are really good at kind of helping out with the process. As I said, they provide all the documentation. They also provide you with like websites and stuff where you can look for accommodation and things like that. And they're really sort of, they're really supportive in that step. And also, if you are struggling, you can reach out to them. They also have their own temporary housing. So they have a hostel as well, which you can stay in for short periods of time. because for me personally, I found a flat before I moved out here. Obviously, not everyone likes that experience. You know, a lot of people like to see a place in person before you commit to kind of moving there.
Yeah, sure.
So a lot of people will opt to come stay here, live in sort of temporary housing for a bit whilst they find a proper flat to rent. But yeah, there's plenty of options, whether you want to have a studio to live by yourself or if you want to share a flat. So for example, I live in a flat share with other people from CERN as well. You're pretty much guaranteed wherever you live, it will be with other people who are also at CERN.
Dan, it's a bit like what you said, like that university kind of feel as well.
Yes,
where
exactly.
you can
It's
imagine
exactly what
it
it
being
is.
a
It
bit
really
like
is,
that.
yeah.
Almost in halls. But Barbara, just to bring you in there, because CERN do offer kind of short stay accommodation, don't they?
So as James mentioned, we have our own CERN hostel on site. So here where we have, I don't know, a couple of, I don't know, maybe 100 rooms. I don't know the exact number. Anyway, we're happy to let you book a room there if you want to stay there. It's up to 3 months, I think, that you can live there. If you find housing earlier, they're usually really flexible and let you move out earlier and then just give the rooms to someone else. And then we have some apartments as well that CERN owns and rents out to their staff members or students, grads, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. And Dan, I do want to come to you on this question about the visa application process. So can you give us a quick insight into your experiences there? Again, any students similar to yourself, maybe thinking, oh, I'd love to do this, but the visa application looks a bit scary. How do I go about it? Let us know how it worked for you.
For me personally, it was, to be honest, it was very simple in terms of the preparation. As soon as I got the offer for the job, I was sent a very comprehensive email with sort of these are the bits that you need to sort of sort out in order to get ready. And one of those things was the visa. And as James mentioned, because British national, if I wanted to live in France, I needed it. But if I'd chosen to live in Switzerland, I wouldn't have needed a visa to live. So I also live in Saint-Denis along with the rest of CERN. And so, but yeah, the visa process, I essentially had to, was given instructions on, okay, you need to fill in this document, send it to this place. And then I was given an appointment at a consulate in the UK. I think there's only like 3. I think there's one in London, one in Manchester, and one in Edinburgh, maybe. But you essentially go to whichever one's closer to you, and they, with your piece of paper that you filled in, that CERN have explained how to fill in, and then they just sort of process you in there. And it was, and then sort of, I don't know, a week or two later, I get my passport sent back with a visa in it. And then I think the one thing to note is, Barbara can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that then visa you get in your passport initially isn't sort of the permanent thing. When you then arrive at CERN, you then will receive a French card, which is sort of like a residency card, which then acts as your full length sort of permission to live in France.
Exactly.
But sort of
Perfectly
most of
explained.
it is most of that. To be fair, CERN sort of, if they don't do it for you, they'll tell you exactly how to do it. So yeah, very lucky. There's people here that are experts, they know exactly what they're doing.
I thought there, Dan, because quite James and Zoe, I think, did you both have this as well, where you can extend obviously your contract at CERN, whether it be an extra month or whatever. And will the visa then replicate that as well? So if you did want to extend for an extra month, you'd be fine. Is that okay?
I believe so. So I have done the full extension, and I can't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but I believe my French card was sort of valid way longer than an extra
brilliant.
here.
Yeah,
But
so you don't have to
obviously
worry. So you did want to extend
exactly.
on.
But obviously I need my job at CERN for it to be valid. So I can't just live in France for the next 5 years. But
Yeah, when you
unfortunately,
leave, you have to give the card back, unfortunately.
Yes. That's a shame. Perfect.
I think
Thanks,
I was just going to jump in there. Sorry, Jess. I think the thing that, this kind of question that we quite often get, and I know you get, Barbara, but, the concerns about relocation and visas and things like that. CERN has been doing this for years and years and years. You've relocated hundreds and thousands of students. So the process is very, very simple. So this kind of worry that I think some students have is it doesn't need to be there because it's, you know, you've done it so many times and the process is really simple. So and hopefully after listening to Dan and James, you can see that, you know, it's all really taken care of.
Yeah, it's a very well-oiled machine, I'd say.
Yeah.
It all runs very smoothly.
Great way to put it. And Zoe, you're slightly different. So you are living in Geneva. So if you don't mind, you know, why was that an option for you?
Well, so I've always lived in cities, and I just really love the sort of more cosmopolitan, lively lifestyle that has to offer. And it's also something that I'm willing to pay the premium for because it is more expensive to live in Switzerland than it is to live in France. That said, it is still something that is probably affordable even to students if you're willing to share a place. And it is also quite tough to find somewhere to live. I'm very, very lucky that I managed to. I actually moved in the day before I started, so just about.
Doing it fine.
But yeah, so that's something that I know some people struggle with, but for me it was worth it, and I'm really happy here. And yeah, I don't live too far away from work. I work on the main Swiss site of CERN, so it's about half an hour by bike, which for me is perfectly reasonable. And I just really enjoy the sort of cosmopolitan and like diverse, sort of more lively lifestyle that Geneva offers, because there's all the other international organizations that are there. There's all kinds of little events that are ongoing, and for me, I really value being in the middle of that. Obviously, it's really nice to live in the little CERN bubble, and you know you get to socialize within that. But I think there's so much that Geneva has to offer, and so many sort of small benefits even. So I think the public transport is a little bit better connected, especially at off-peak hours. I personally didn't have to apply for a visa, but you know, if these are things that you know get in the way, it helps to you know not have to file tax forms and all sorts of things like that. So yeah, for me, I'm very happy in Geneva, but that's a choice that suited my lifestyle personally.
And again, it's nice that that is an option. So yes, and this is why, Zoe, I wanted you to say that, because again, it's different people will have different priorities and what they want to kind of experience whilst there. So that's really, really good. And also Surf and the Gradcracker team. So Georgia and Emily and Morgan at Gradcracker have worked very hard with Barbara and Sophie to keep the CERN hub fantastically up to date. But you've got a lot of content within the CERN hub about relocating and everything, haven't you? So yeah, do have a good look at that because there's lots of information on there. You've got lots of blogs and bits. So gosh, it's nearly 10 to, and I still got lots of questions.
One more.
One more. Okay, let me pick some then. Okay, well, life outside of CERN. So we'll quickly run round. So James, I'm going to come back to you. What have you been doing outside of the CERN bubble? What's your hobbies? What have your interests? And have CERN kind of helped and supported you to be more sociable on an evening?
So obviously, as has been mentioned before, it's a bit like being back at uni. It's very social. There's so many young people, whether it's students or graduates. And I remember at the very start, they kind of organised a couple of events to try and encourage you to meet people. Obviously, naturally, you just meet more and more people, and there's plenty of social activities to do. And obviously, the location of where CERN is, it's perfect if you love a kind of outdoor lifestyle like I do. So in the summer and well through to the winter, you know, spend my weekends in the mountains basically, whether it's hiking or you know, now for example, which is quite unique as well, CERN have a lot of different clubs, one of which is a ski club. So from last Saturday, every weekend with the ski club, so with everyone from CERN, and they organise everything. Every Saturday going skiing now to learn how to ski, which is really exciting for me. but yeah, it's brilliant. And obviously, if you don't live in Geneva, it's not too hard to get into a city. It's probably about half an hour or so from CERN. And obviously, you have plenty to do there in the summer. There's lots of nice events like live music or swimming in the lake, or there's just endless nice things you can do basically. And if you have a friend with a car, it's even better. You can go explore all of the Alps and all of Switzerland.
Good tip, find a
great.
friend with a car.
Perfect, James. Thank you so much for that. Soph, I'll hand back to you because I think we've got so much to discuss about the application process. So I will hand back because I think Dan and Zoe will probably answer those questions that I'm wanting to know the answer to anyway by the application process.
Thank you very much, Jessie. I think everything that everyone said so far today is just been amazing, and it's so nice to have such different backgrounds, different roles that you're working in. It really gives that everything that we're talking about at the beginning of the webinar in terms of breadth of roles. Like it really brings that to life. So that was really great to hear about your experiences. But now we want to hear about how to get the job. So Barbara, I am going to come back to you. To cover the application and recruitment process. So as we've mentioned, you have lots and lots of roles live right now on your Company Hub on Gradcracker. When the students and graduates click that Apply Online Now button, what are the next steps from there?
So once you click the apply button, you'll be redirected to an online form, and this is the application form where we basically ask questions about yourself, how we can contact you, obviously as well, and then your motivation to apply for the job. Some of the graduate roles have specific questions about the project. So if you have experience with as a software developer with C++ or whatever, and you basically just answer them, but it's short questions. And then you also upload all the required documents. So for all positions except for summer students, you just need to upload your CV, and that's enough. Transcripts or diploma or recommendation letter, cover letter are optional documents. So if you want to go the extra mile, do upload it, but it's not required per se. For summer students, it looks a bit different. There you upload your CV, your transcript, and then one recommendation letter as well. And something I really want to highlight is that it's really important, even though you upload your CV, we're still going to ask you to fill out a box of your educational background and your experience. And lots of people, they upload their CV and think, they can read that in there. I won't fill out the boxes. But it's really important if you want to make a good first impression, do take the extra 5 minutes. I think it can even the program can automatically take it from your CV and then you just edit the little details and stuff. But that's basically the first thing we see is that education and experience background. And if it's empty, it's just not the best first impression, let's say. But yeah, once you complete the application form, my team and I, we're going to go look through the application, check if you're actually eligible for the job or the internship. And then we pass all those applications on to the hiring team. They all have a look and kind of compile their shortlisted candidates. And then they could either invite you to a self-recorded interview, which is a bit scary at first, but it shouldn't be because it's really just questions about yourself, your motivation, and stuff like this. So no hard technical questions. Or they might go a different route and invite you to a Zoom interview right away. That really depends on how many applications we get and so on, whether we have that extra step in there or not. And then hopefully you get selected, For students, we have, for the technical admin and doctoral students, we have selection moments 3 times a year. And for graduates, it's usually, you should hear back within 2 to 4 weeks after the application deadline.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so it can be a very, very quick process. I actually wanted to touch upon the technical studentship process a little bit more because Jess and I we were talking about it the other day, weren't we? About the selection panels and kind of when all of that happens.
Yes.
So
I was thinking, was we?
Yeah, we were. I was like, you were looking at me blankly, but we definitely were. Yeah, so with that process, the selection panels, when they meet, is that when all of the offers are decided or is that when the interviews are decided? What do those panels do so the students kind of are aware of timelines on those?
So for the technical students, it's quite a long process, you know. Sometimes you apply in, I don't know, November, let's say, and then you won't hear back until February, which is when the selection committee meets. But basically, the interviews and everything happens before that. So the hiring
Yeah.
teams, they interview students on their own. And then in the end, they tell us which student they'd like to have. And then you
Okay.
can imagine there's I don't know, about 100 supervisors that all select students from the pools. And often there's conflicts where several supervisors want the same student. In those cases, we try to resolve any conflicts in these selection committees. So
I
each
see.
department representative brings their lists, and then we kind of go through them. But usually in a case where a student is selected for several projects, we give the free choice to the student. So we tell them, you're selected for all these projects, which one would you like to choose? And then the other supervisors would take a reserve candidate if they have a second choice, let's say.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, I think that's good to know, because obviously on the roles on Gradcracker, on the technical studentships, you will see that the dates of the next selection committee. So that'll give you a good idea as to when you'll hear back from your application. So just be aware of that. So thank you for clarifying that, Barbara. We now have a student question, which has been submitted from Charlie at the University of Leicester. So Charlie has said, as a student with a master's degree in physics with no previous research-based work experience, how can I make my CV stand out from other candidates and progress to further stages in the application? So I think this is kind of, really general about, if I haven't got that research experience, how can I succeed? So Barbara, over to you.
Yeah. So first of all, it's absolutely no problem if you don't have any research-based experience beforehand, because it's a student program. CERN's very big on educating the youth. We're aware of that, right? So we don't expect you to have work experience. We can be the first work experience, and we're happy to train you during your internship. But in general, there's a few tips and tricks that students can use. So first of all, they can highlight relevant projects and skills that they were acquired throughout their studies, for example. So even if it was a university project, just highlight this one and tell us what you learned, what kind of skills you gained from that. Hard and soft skills, could be collaboration and teamwork as well. Then you can include extracurriculars, any volunteering experiences, or other jobs, if you worked at a department store or something, mention it as well. Even if it has nothing to do with the job, it's good to see that students are motivated, that they do go out and try out different things. So that's really important to put in there as well. And then, of course, the big kind of selection criterion is the motivation for students, because we want students who are motivated to come to CERN, to get hands-on experience and so on. So this is really kind of the deciding factor, let's say. So really focus on that motivation statement. If it's not a cover letter, we ask you in like a short paragraph what your main motivation is, and do bring that all across, what you want to learn and so on as well.
Amazing. Great tips there, Barbara. Thank you very much. And I think that's that motivation statement is key. Make sure you get those messages across. And I think actually that leads us on really nicely to come across to you, Zoe, to talk about kind of how you put your application together, because obviously you were successful. You've already kind of touched upon earlier in the webinar about some of the projects that you did at university and how you want to use that at CERN. So you've given us a bit of an insight there, but yeah, if you could tell us how you prepared for putting your initial application to CERN together and the type of stuff that you included.
So obviously I found my job on Gradcracker, and it was actually super useful. I thought it was really good the way that I was able to filter what I had studied, what I was interested in, find, the jobs that I was technically qualified for, and then find basically all of the relevant information on the Gradcracker Company Hub about what the job would involve. The job description was really clear, the qualifications, and so it was really easy to see that, well, I was qualified, I was interested, and I was able to apply straight away through there. So that was super, super clear. And then based on that, it was mainly about, so similarly to what Barbara described, so trying to gather up the information, collecting my experiences, but also my specific motivation. I think something that is important to highlight in any application is why CERN specifically. So, I think in my view, the name sells itself. But I think a lot of times what the hiring teams are interested in hearing is what specifically draws you to CERN, what kind of work and why. And sometimes that can be a little bit of a more thought-provoking question. And so for me, that was something I had to dig a little bit on and think about how my experiences aligned with what the role was going to be expecting of me. But yeah, I think the application process to CERN was relatively straightforward in terms of, again, uploading a CV, having a few answers prepared for some questions. But yeah, generally, I think yeah, that's all I can recommend is yeah, just think about how you can match up to the job description. Think about what sets you aside in terms of your qualifications. For me, it was particularly useful that I already spoke French, and that was one of the criteria in the job that I applied to. So yeah, such things might help you stand out. It's just worth looking at what is described and yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Zoe. I think, yeah, everything that you said there in terms of relating your what you'd study, making sure you're reading and thoroughly understanding the job description, able to kind of reiterate that. If you do have those kind of extra qualifications, or being able to speak a second language, all of these things, anything that's kind of another thing that you have that maybe another candidate won't have, make sure that those messages are getting across. And yeah, just to kind of make clear on this point, you do not have to speak French to work at CERN. It's a requirement for Zoe's particular role, but I don't want suddenly people panicking there. But because of what we were talking about with Zoe and, the guidelines and working across the two different jurisdictions in France and Switzerland, it is required for your particular role. But Dan and James, for example, don't speak French. So thank you very much. Yeah, go.
Something that came to mind is I also want people not to be put off if you don't feel like you have enough work experience. I personally didn't do a placement year. I did do a couple of internships here and there. But yeah, I think it's just about highlighting what you have done and yeah, don't be put off. For my role specifically, it's a grad role, but again, they don't expect you to have, tons and tons of work experience. They really do train you on the job and they're more interested in seeing your determination and how you leverage what you do know to the job that you get. So yeah, I just want that to be clear. It's not one of those things where you need to have done it all to be considered.
No, that's brilliant. I think that's a really great point to make. And I think, we want to make sure that every student that's watching, whether they've got a year's work experience, some internships or nothing at all, it's more about, like we've been talking about, showing your motivation and that you're right for CERN. So thank you for that, Zoe. I know we have run slightly over, but I'm going to continue just kind of going to James and Dan on the last couple of questions. So James, how did you prepare and find your interview with CERN?
So for my interview, I just had a virtual interview, which was very much focused, not technical, for me at least. It was all about, why do I want to work here? Why do I think I'm qualified for this role? What kind of can I bring to it? So I think for these kind of questions, particularly stuff about like your motivation, for example, if you've applied to a job and you really want to work here, you should already know why it should be an easy question for you to answer. And I think speaking to my colleagues here who, are watching these interviews, they said that really showed through of some people. Is very evident that, they don't really care as much about working here. They're just kind of applying to it and they can, filter those people out quite quickly. But I think, yeah, really kind of focus on, think about what it is you can bring to the team as well. And also, as I said before, for my particular role, my job description was very sort of thorough, saying exactly sort of the things I'll be doing, what skills I need. I really thought about, highlighting things I've done in my past, the things I've done, whether that's projects at university, whether it's even modules I studied at university or things I did in my placement year, where I can really show my sort of experience and how I can meet those sort of criteria that they're looking for. I think that's really crucial. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, James. I think this is a really good point as well. There's the job descriptions that we have that CERN provide to us and are on the Gradcracker Company Hub. They are very, very thorough as to what's going to be involved, especially when you come to the graduate roles. There is a real breakdown of what's going to be involved in the role. So you get a really good understanding, even before that initial application, whether that's going to be something of real interest. But also do exactly what James says. Store that job description. Obviously, you've got the Gradcracker shortlist feature, so you can save that within your dashboard on Gradcracker, but refer back to that when you are preparing for your interview so that you know that you can relate your skills directly from that job description. So thank you very much for that, James. That's a really good tip to make sure that you utilize that.
Yeah. The other thing, just to add, that I really liked about the application is you have a lot of companies that have, like, 5 rounds of, do this, then do this technical quiz, then you might have an online interview, then an in-person interview, whereas I think CERN's a bit more streamlined, which is good. You have your written application and then a virtual or face-to-face interview, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It sounds like it's a very straightforward process, and you get your offers very quickly after that that interview. So thank you very much, James. Dan, coming back to you now. We've had some hints and tips from Zoe and James, but is there anything that you would add to this to pass on to our audience about how to be successful during the application and performing in the interview? And just to add on to that, we've had a question from Alessandro at the University of Bath, which is obviously where you are studying as well, who's asked a similar question. How did you prepare for that interview?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's been sort of, this whole motivation thing is very key to it. But I think the one thing that I will add on to that is to sort of show that you know CERN. And I don't mean that you need to be sort of an expert at anything. You don't need to be a physicist. You don't need to sort of know any sort of specifics about technical things, but show that you sort of know what CERN stands for. And
Yeah.
So, for example, in my case, a few things that sort of really resonate with me from CERN is that they've got very strong sort of international collaboration. And so that was one thing I really emphasized both for the interview and in the written things, was because I come from, I grew up in international schools. So that's sort of a thing that I grew up and was always surrounded by. So I tried to make sort of that association that that's something I'm very comfortable with. That's something that really sort of would fit well with me and hopefully make me fit well at CERN. And similarly, the same, they have a lot of environmental goals, and I have sort of very conscious about that kind of thing as well. So draw that back in, and then because I obviously applied to the technical internship, I sort of relate those sort of concepts back to roughly what my job could be about. And then obviously the whole research thing, and personally, that's sort of my sort of goals within my career is to end up in sort of more researchy places if I can. And so then I sort of draw that back into myself as well and explain that, okay, that's sort of, these are my goals. These are sort of the projects I've worked on in my personal time. These are sort of the sort of goals and the ways I've sort of guided my university career as well, that make me sort of match what I could be doing at CERN, or even just CERN in general, even if you sort of don't know exactly what kind of role you'll be partaking in. And I think that's sort of the main thing, where even if, in my case, I didn't actually have a very specific explanation of my job beforehand.
Yeah.
I uploaded my CV and just showed all of the skills, all of the projects I'd done in my own time, the sort of things that I'd done. And then I was picked out to the right supervisor based on those things. And so just showing how what I'd done relate to CERN's values, relate to CERN's culture, with specific examples, really, I think my guess is that sort of helps with them picking you out and seeing that you're a good match. And then obviously there's sort of the knowledge as well about, when I was doing my interview, they were explaining, okay, on your CV, you listed that you worked on these projects, you got involved in these things, explain to me why you made these decisions to do these things. So having just a good understanding of the, basically be truthful, show that you're very willing to learn and willing to sort of contribute to these things, that's the best sort of advice I can give, I think.
Amazing. No.
So good.
Honestly, all three of you, Zoe, Dan, and James, you could work in talent acquisition already. You pretty much said it all.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing. There's so many things that you said there, Dan, that it just are exactly what we would want the students to hear. You do have to put that time and effort and thought into an application, as you did. And also, I love what you were saying about relating it to your future goals in your career. It's not just about right now. Think about where you want to be long term, and make those goals clear as well. So yeah, just brilliant to hear that guidance. So thank you very much for that, Dan. Barbara, anything to add to these amazing students and grads?
I mean,
as to
yeah. They mentioned almost everything. There's a few more general tips I can give you, maybe not super related to CERN, but as Zoe said, of course, customize your application and maybe even your CV for the specific position if you know what it's going to be. So the graduates out there will know. You can include keywords, highlight your most relevant experiences at first. And then of course, also show, I don't know, if you had any big achievements or even small ones, instead of just saying, I improved efficiency at my old job, make it quantifiable, Say I increased the efficiency by 20% or stuff like this. Just makes it more tangible for us to see what you really worked on. And then, the motivation, a big part, obviously. Tell us why you're passionate about the specific role. We get lots of applications saying, it's always been my dream to work at CERN, and this is great, and we all get it, right? I think most of us feel the same way. But tell us why you want to work on that specific project. Because CERN's so big, and make sure you do your research, as Dan said as well, about CERN, kind of what it's all about. Because otherwise, if you say, I've always dreamed about working at CERN because it's an amazing company, we already know that maybe you didn't do your research so much, otherwise you would know it's an international organization. Just little things like this. And then tell us, really important for the student and graduate program, what you want to contribute, but also what you want to learn at CERN, because this is really one of our main focuses is training and upskilling people, right? So if you already tell us what you want to achieve, it shows motivation and it shows you've done your research as well. And then in terms of interviewing tips, just again, do your research, prepare questions, because it shows that you thought about it and you want to know more about CERN. And then if you're asked any questions, use a STAR method, for example. I don't know if everyone knows it out here, but it's kind of the method where you first talk about the situation, then the task, your personal action and contribution, and the result. It's just a really simple way to structure your answers in a clear manner, and that really helps usually.
Amazing. Yes, thank you very much for mentioning that. That's something that you talk about quite a lot, isn't it, Jess, during your presentations? So yes, STAR method.
And you know what, so just to add to that, and I think this is what, personally, you think, wow, as Gradcracker as well, we're doing the right thing. We're giving students that use Gradcracker all this information. The big takeaways: you must research before you apply. Get organised, save the job to your shortlist, refer back to that at every single stage, refer back to your research and your notes. And I think, a student that uses Gradcracker and uses Gradcracker properly will then ultimately be a Zoe, James, or a Dan, because we'll give you all the information and you just sit there and think, yes, it's all together.
It does. Thanks, Jess. And thank you so much to our amazing students and graduates from CERN today, and obviously the lovely Barbara. It's been amazing hearing about your experiences, what you've been doing so far. I mean, I can't believe some of you have only been there 6 months, the amount of stuff that you've achieved. So thank you for a really great overview today about what life working at CERN is like, and then how to get that job, Barbara. So I'm sure everyone today is going to be rushing off to prepare their applications. The recording of this webinar will be available for you to watch and re-watch as many times as you would like to in full tomorrow on the CERN Gradcracker Company Hub. And then we'll also go through and break this up into bite-sized highlights, covering some of the key topics that we've discussed today, of which there are many things. And remember, our employers, CERN absolutely loves it when you tell them that you have watched their webinar, as they know that means that you've had a really good understanding of the organisation, what you might be able to do there, and you have a real interest in working for them. So make sure if you're here today and you're going on to apply, you tell them that you've watched this webinar. So make sure you go and get your applications in. Carla and I will be here Jess and I will be here next week for MACE on the 23rd of January at 2 o'clock. But once again, a massive thank you to CERN for joining us for an amazing webinar. And yeah, bye everyone.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.